So what if? What if you found out today you had 1 year left? What would you do? How would you use that time? What would be important to you and what wouldn't matter so much anymore? What are some of the things you do right now that would seem a lot like a waste of time? And what are some of the things that you're ignoring that would suddenly feel really, really important? I'm not you. I don't pretend to know any of you well enough to know exactly how you would react in that situation. All I can tell you is that 15 years ago, that's where I was. 23 years old, sitting in a hospital bed in Toronto, not knowing if tomorrow would come or not. And in the time since then, I've had the privilege to meet many other people who have dealt with a similar situation. And even though we came from different backgrounds, even though we had different reasons for why we were facing what might be the last days of our lives, we all shared one thing in common. And that is when we found out we may not have a lot of time left, we started to live differently. We made a mindset shift. We stopped worrying about the what ifs and the should haves, and we started to live today. And so the message I have for you today is very simple. Live today. And you may say to me, well, what the heck does that mean? I mean, that sounds nice, but what does that look like? I mean, what other day is there to live? But put your hand up for me if you've ever had a bad Monday and let it ruin Tuesday. And everybody else is lying, and that's fine. How many of us have had something coming up in a week, a month, a year, and stressed and worried for days and weeks and months? It's human nature, right? We all do it. But what if I challenged you to stop doing that? To focus right here, right now, on what you can control. Now, I want to be really clear as we go through this presentation what exactly I'm proposing. Because I'm not proposing what you may be thinking right now, the classic motivational speaker line. Tell me if you've ever heard this line before. Live every day like it's the last day of your life. Makes for a wonderful Hallmark card. It's also a horrible way to live your life. I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't want to be driving on the Trans-Canada with a bunch of people living today like the last day of their life. I mean, how do you drive in that context? I'm thinking it's, pedal to the floor the whole way, because who cares, I'm dead tomorrow anyway.
Which is inform people of your condition so that if
what
something
does that
happens,
look
they're
like?
ready.
I mean, how many times can
And
you
so I
call
said,
your
my
friends and
name's
your
Matt, I
family
have
and
a
say, I
problem.
love
He
you,
says,
as
my name is Matt, I have epilepsy.
for days before I
And
get to know you?
I think it's growing up in hospitals has done this, but I like to think that I have an informal medical degree. And so when he says, I have epilepsy, I jump into first
So the
aid.
invitation
Don't
for you
worry,
is
I've
not
got
to
you
live
covered.
every day
I
like
start
it's the
going down my
last
list.
day. It's not to...
And he says, whoa, hold
It's
on.
to be
He
alive
said,
every day.
if I have a seizure...
It's to take the time every day, as the speakers, Derek was just talking about it, being grateful for very simple, normal things that we take for granted every day. And so I'll invite you for a second, if this is a theme today, to close your eyes and just put your hand over your heart. And just feel your heart as it beats regularly, strong, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times every day. You never think about it, but it's there, doing its job. And if it wasn't, you'd know it really fast. And that's exactly why I was in the hospital that day. You can open your eyes. In fact, that's why I was in the hospital for more than 6 months. You see, my heart had developed something called ventricular tachycardia. A big medical word, just means my heart was beating whenever the heck it felt like it. Sometimes really fast, sometimes really slow, never in any particular rhythm or order. And at 23 years old, the doctor said, you're at risk for something called sudden cardiac death. Doesn't take a medical degree to understand that. Heart goes really, really fast, and then it stops. And they said, look, there's nothing we can do about this medically. We can't treat you with any medication that hasn't been tried. There's no procedure to fix this. But we also can't, in good medical conscience, send you back out onto the street with this condition, because if we do and something happens, by the time someone finds you collapsed, calls 911, and someone reacts, it's going to be too late. And I said, okay, so what's the plan? And they said, well, the plan is you will come in and you will stay in this hospital, and we will put you on a heart monitor that monitors your heart 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And if something happens, an alarm will go off at the nurse's station, and they will come in and shock your heart with the defibrillators, the paddles, like we've all seen on TV. And that's supposed to reset the rhythm and save your life. And I said, okay, so how long am I here? And they said, well, you're here until you get a transplant, hopefully. Now, my doctor was far too professional to say what she really thought. I mean, we knew the statistics. The statistics were I was going to die long before that happened. So I want you to imagine what it was like moving into this 10 by 10 hospital room. I mean, most of us have been in a hospital room at some point in our lives. Bed, table, closet, empty bare walls. And this is going to be home for 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years. We don't know. And for the first couple of weeks, my nerves were shot all the time. Every time my heart skipped a beat, what was that? I remember going to the nurse's station every morning and saying, how many times did my heart go crazy last night? Because they had a record and they would tell me. And for weeks and weeks and weeks, I was afraid of going to sleep at night. And then finally one morning, for whatever reason, sometimes we have these moments, right? We have those epiphanies and you just go, oh, where did that come from? And why didn't it come months ago? I thought, I'm still here. But I worried all day yesterday. I've wasted it and it's gone, and now I don't get it back. And so I made myself a commitment that day to live today, to focus my time and my energy and everything I had on living this day as best as I could. And then it struck me that I'd learned this lesson a long time ago. And I figured out since then that it's a guy thing. We need to learn things more than once. Women are pretty quick, but us guys, we're a little stubborn. So it usually takes us a few tries before we figure it out, right? It was my first day of university, 1996, September, and I had convinced my parents that the sound education decision, despite what the finances might say, was that I should go to Mount Allison, even though we lived in Moncton. Yeah! I should go to Mount A, Mom, even though we live in Moncton, and I should live in residence. Yes, it costs $6,000 more a year, but it'll be the full university experience. And so I filled out all the proper paperwork, and then I had this realization about mid-July. Mount A is really small. And when I went to tour those residences, I don't remember any single rooms for first-year students. I'm going to have to live with a complete stranger. And I lost it. Because we've all been in those rooms, right? I mean, even a guy my size can touch both of the beds without moving. And I thought, what if this guy is a freak? What if he stays up until 4 in the morning? What if he listens to horrible music? Or what if he eats little guys like me for breakfast? And all summer long, my mind is spinning. And how does it happen when we allow ourselves to worry? What happens, right? You ever see the illustration? It's a cartoon, and there's a little snowball at the top of a hill, right? And some cartoon character is going to run away from the snowball, and the snowball gets bigger and bigger and faster as it comes down the hill. That's such a great analogy for how our worries work. Now, they start out as little, small, somewhat logical concerns, but if we let our mind race, they become big, crazy, scary, out-of-control things. So by the end of that summer, I had resigned myself to the fact that I was going to live with a serial killer. It's just the way it was, and I would sleep with one eye open and try not to die. And we get to Mount A on the first day of school, and I'm concerned about nothing that I should have been concerned about, like academics or any of that stuff. I was worried about who I was going to have to live with. And we get to the residence, and there's this girl at the front desk. She's got a bunch of keys and a list of names. Mark Black, you're in room 109. It's just down the hall on the right, she says, and she hands me the keys. And I'm walking down the hall with my parents thinking, please let me be the first one in this room so at least I can get kind of comfortable before it invades my space. And I find room 109. And I go to unlock the door. It's already open. It's just a crack. I can't see anything, but I can hear voices. I know he's in there. You ever had a moment in your life or in your career where you were terrified on the inside, but you didn't want anybody else to know? So you take that deep breath, and I stand up as tall as I can, try and look intimidating. He's not going to mess with me. And I walk through the door, and I hear this voice say, "Hey." I'm thinking, that's a pretty deep voice. It's going to be okay, it's going to be okay, it's going to be okay. I'm going to turn around, I'm going to stare him down, and I'm going to show him, you don't mess with me. And so I turn around, he's right over here, and I'm going to look at him and scare the crap out of him, except I'm staring at his belly button. So I look up and up and up and said, "Hello, sir." He was 6 feet, 7 inches tall. The staff in residence had 700 freshmen, so 350 guys, give or take, that they could pick from, and they put the tallest and shortest students in the entire university together in the same room. I'm going to bed that night looking over at, I'm going to bed that night looking at my bed and the 2 feet of mattress I'm not using. And I'm looking at him with his feet out over his desk because he doesn't fit in the bed. And I'm thinking, please don't let him eat me in my sleep. Now, as it turns out, Matt's the giant freak's name, incidentally. Matt and I had lots in common. We were both from Atlantic, Canada. I'm from here. Matt's from Newfoundland. I didn't always understand him, but we got along pretty well. We both had parents who were teachers. We both had illnesses. I had my heart problem, obviously. Matt had epilepsy. And so right after we met, we did what everybody with a chronic illness is trained to do, which is inform people of your condition so that if something happens, they're ready. And so I say, my name is Mark, I have a heart problem. And he says, oh, my name is Matt, I have epilepsy. And I think it's growing up in hospitals has done this, but I like to think that I have an informal medical degree. And so when he says I have epilepsy, I jump into first aid mode. Like, you don't worry, I've got you covered, right? And I start going down my list. And he says, whoa, hold on. He said, if I have a seizure, I'm going to be fine. Don't worry. I've had lots of seizures. I'm always okay. In fact, if I have a seizure, you only need to do one thing. Okay, what's that? Get out of the way. See, you get it. I didn't get it. He's like, if I have a seizure, I'll be fine, but I'm 6'7", 285, and if I'm thrashing on you, you're not going to be okay. Matt was one of the groomsmen at our wedding a few years ago, 10 years after that day. And he reinforced for me over the course of that year the lesson that I'm sharing with you right now. I had worried a summer of my life, wasted it away for something that turned out just fine. And my challenge to you would be that most of the stuff you worry about works that way. And for those of you objecting in your head right now and saying, well, not everything works out, true. Did your worrying make it better or make it worse? I've never met anybody who said, I worried a lot and that helped me to anticipate all these great things and made me function at a higher level and I was able to anticipate problems. Worry doesn't do that. Now, am I saying we shouldn't plan ahead? Absolutely not. We need to plan. We need to have goals. All of that stuff is important. But if you're going to make those goals happen, you need to be executing. And execution is about today. I don't care what you've already done. Where you're going is controlled by what you do today, and then what you do tomorrow, and then what you do the next day. It's about execution, day after day after day. It's about living today. How well you live today controls how you do tomorrow. And how well you live day after day after day after day will be how you live your life. Live today also means, incidentally, do not wait, as we were talking about in that introduction. I meet so many people who are planning their calendar around a day that isn't in it. That day is called someday. There is a Sunday, but that's not the same as someday. Someday does not exist. And yet, how many of us have a goal that we're going to get to someday? I can promise you that sitting in that hospital bed, not knowing whether the next heartbeat was coming, all I could think about was all the stuff I was going to do someday, and now I didn't know if someday was going to come. So do not wait for that day. Start now. I've had the privilege to meet so many people who do so many incredible things, a lot of them really young people. And they remind me every day that you're never too young, you're never too old. I've met 13-year-olds that have founded nonprofits. I met a man named Ed Whitlock who is in his 80s who still runs marathons in under 3 hours. So you're never too old to start living your goals and your dreams now. Start taking action now. Now, a couple of things that I want to underline, and then I'm gonna finish up. Speaking of living now, and we've heard a lot about taking risks, and we've heard a lot about being brave. I've been challenged a couple of times. I said, I've got this really cool idea for an online coaching program, and I want to launch it, and I got to do it, but this, and but that, and but this, and but that. And I'll warn you, I don't know where Dan is right now, but don't say those things in front of Dan Martell, because he'll tell you, if you know what his license plate says, it's JFDI, which stands for just effing do it. And so I'm going to do that. So I want to invite all of you I just want to tell all of you that I will be launching that program. I promised that I would. The second week of January, where we're going to dive deep into all of this stuff. We're going to do weekly video training where you're going to get those delivered by email videos, or 4, 5, 6 minutes. I've shot them all. They look awesome. And then we're going to do a couple of monthly group coaching calls. If you're interested in that, all you need to do is send me a quick text. I want to make sure I get the number right. So if you send a text to 855-969-5300, so 855-969-5300, and text the word mindset, then you will get A, a free chapter from my book, and B, I will send you some information about that course. So again, it's 855-969-5300. And I want to leave you with one last thought. Well, 2 last thoughts. I wear this little thing around my wrist every day that says, "Live today." Helps me walk the talk, so that when I'm, whining to my wife about something I screwed up yesterday, she can remind me, which she's very happy to do. And so I have some of those out there. I also have some of my books out there afterwards. So when you're all done and Dan has finished firing you all up, I'll be out there at the table out back if you want to come and say hi or grab one of those. Feel free to do that. And I want to leave you with this. There's a great saying: Rome wasn't built in a day. And that's very true. Whether you're an entrepreneur or an employee, whatever your goals and your dreams are for 2017, they're not going to happen tomorrow or the next day. In fact, many of them are going to take most of the year to accomplish, unless you're Marcel and you can do it in 31 days. It's just mind-boggling and impressive. But here's the thing. Rome wasn't built in a day, but it started in a day. It starts somewhere. Everything starts somewhere. Not just a day, a moment. A moment, plain and ordinary, like every other moment. A moment just like this one. So my invitation to you is, make this that moment. Make this the moment that you look back on in 6 months, a year, 5 years, and say, that's when I made a mindset shift. That's when I stopped focusing on what I couldn't do and started focusing on what I could do. That's when I stopped making excuses and making plans for someday and started living this day. Make this your moment. Live today. You guys have been awesome. Have a great rest of your conference. Take care.